Okay, everyone. This is an '86 C10 Chevy pickup. My plan here is to show how to replace your standard instrument cluster that has what they call the idiot lights or the warning lights. We're going to put in the gauges that came with this year. Instead of having the warning lights, I have another instrument cluster that I'm going to swap out. The only issue is you have to do some rewiring, so I'll show that as well. At the same time, I'm going to instead of using the incandescent lights, we're going to try to switch over to LEDs to get a better or brighter instrument cluster, because these are kind of dim and kind of hard to see during dusk and dawn areas. So that's basically it. And next thing you'll see is I'll try to take a picture with the lights on at night, and that way you get a example or an idea where I'm coming from. But next thing you'll see is hopefully I'll be doing the exchange and the wiring. Everyone, doing this at night is the only time I have to do it, so sorry about the light, and hopefully it doesn't wash things out. I took off this guy here. The best way to do this is to get all the screws out. There's Phillips heads that are in here. You just pull them right out. In the process, you'll pull out of the dash a little bit, but make sure you have your parking brake on, and you grab your of course, turn the key a little bit and grab your drive selector, take it all the way down to first. That way it gives you enough room to, because this gets in the way when you try to pull it out. That's what you want to do, just to get that panel out, so you don't, the best way to do it without breaking it. And then at the same time, later on, you take all the screws out, especially around the gear selector here. This gear selector has two screws that are in here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Two screws that go in here. I removed them already, and it's connected to the steering column. You can see that or not. Just here, so it's kind of primitive, but that's how it's done. So what you want to do is you want to remove the screws out of your whole assembly. It's holding your assembly in here. Right now this is loose. This is from years of, this is already cracked off from years of vibrating, I guess. But this won't come out unless you remove the lens. So make sure you take the screws off for the lens. That's important. There's no reason to take this off the car itself. You're gonna have to fish this wire out carefully without breaking it. That's what I'm tempted to do. Try to remember how it goes back in there. And this is gonna stay in with the car, basically. So it loops around here, goes through here, and there's no reason for me to take this out. I mean, it's connected fine. So I'm just gonna let it hang here for a little bit. But right now I took all the screws out, and I'm ready to take this assembly out. So that'll be my next thing to do, and I'll keep you guys up to date. And again, I apologize for the night work, because it's the only time I have. So okay, everyone, I got the dash out. You want to make sure that you take apart or take off the speedometer here, because it will give you a pain. This is for the light that goes into the odometer reading for your mileage. And of course, here's the pin or the connector that we need to start taking apart to fix the pins. So I forgot to mention that you should disconnect your battery when you're doing all this stuff. Again, I can show you the back of the speedometer here. If you can see it or not, there's this little tab here that you have to press to unlock the speedometer. Just when you're up in there, you have to go underneath the dash, and when you're in there, just kind of press this tab here, and it should release the speedometer, and it'll snap back in too as well. Because you're pushing on this, it'll snap right in. So that is basically it. I'm gonna take the speedometer and the fuel gauge, because the needles look pretty good, decent shape, and I'm gonna put them into the new gauge cluster, and we'll see how it goes from there. But so far, that's the only thing I ran into. It is a bear to get this out. I mean, you can see it's not the easiest. You have to fiddle with it to get it out. Another tip too is loosen. If we have a vent here, loosen this guy, because that way you have room to bring the casing down, and just kind of just slides out that way. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but you'll get it. I mean, you'll figure it out. It's not that big of a deal. Just be patient, and go from there. Back on night vision again. It's a pain. It's not the clearest, the best. I repinned all of these. Now the best thing to do is get a schematic. A schematic will show you what the pins are for the warning and idiot lights, and it'll show you also the on the schematic. It'll show you the wiring or the repinning of the for the gauge clusters. So just to give you an idea, I haven't found anybody who shows how to do this online, but I can show you real quick how to take these pins out. You take a small screwdriver like this, and hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. You go underneath the pin, and you go as far as you can. I mean, don't push too hard, and you pry up a little bit. What's happening is there's like a little tab that sticks out, stops this pin from going that direction. Let's see if I can pull this out. I pulled up on it. Again, you put the screwdriver in, you pull up on it, and you should be able to push this out. Maybe it's not, I don't want to damage it, being a little too gentle. There we go. Pin should pull right out, and I'll show you the tab that I'm talking about. Pull this. It's the gray one. Sorry if I'm losing the light in the focus. I should have picked an easier one to pull, but okay. Here we go. So you pull this out, and what you're doing when you're in that connector, you're just pushing up along this tab right here. If you can see this tab, you're just pushing this, making it flat enough that way it pops back out, and that's basically it. To put them back, I kind of pry this gently open. I don't want to break it, and it will snap right back in. Pretty easily, so you'll hear it snap. See, just like that, and it's not gonna come back out. I guess I could have shown you on this too as well. Now, when I repinned these, I had two left over. One is for the alternator, and then one is for that goes to ignition. I believe this 25 is the one that goes to the alternator. Reason being is that you have a light, a warning light for the alternator, and I believe the 50, I have to check on the 50, I'm not too sure what the 50 is for. Oh, it's for ignition. This is like another power. I'm not sure exactly what that was for, like for a blower switch or something like that. So you're gonna have these two left over. They're brown, they're left over, and 25 I know is for the alternator. And since it has a warning light, it had a light that was attached to it, which represents a resistor, which excites the alternator to charge. So if you left this open by itself, alternator will not charge. What this does is sends a resistance to the alternator, basically tells it to charge as it's running. Without this, it would not charge, and it's kind of terrible thing to have, because if your light bulb burns out, so to speak, you'll never know it that your alternator is bad. So with that being said, we're gonna clip, I'm gonna figure out, actually I'm gonna put a resistor on here so it will turn the alternator to charge. And for this 50 here, I believe I'm gonna cut this off, and I'm missing one ground that belongs in one of these spacings here. I have to look at the schematic to be sure, but I'm missing one ground, which is black. One of these guys. Either I can tie off one of these guys here, or I can tie off to the body of the truck. But I think what I'll do is I'll tie off to one of these guys here and stick in the proper arrangement for the ground. So I think that's it. Hopefully that gives you an idea, or hopefully I explained it well enough. Sometimes I mumble, so okay. So next time I'll continue. I talked about the wiring that was here before. There was two brown wires. One was a 25, number 25 on the schematic. The other one was a 50. The 25 was for the alternator light, and the 50 was just coming from ignition. So I ended up putting the 50 in its place. 50 would belong, and I put the 50 over here where I was missing a 50. So I put that in. And then for the alternator, what I decided to do, some people, they get a kit to have the resistor to the kit. What I end up doing is putting the light bulb back in, and I end up adding two wires to the light bulb, because the light bulb is going to act as my resistor. So that's you got to have a resistor in order for the alternator to work. And just to make a correction, this is not a light. This is actually a sensor that goes for the cruise control. I made that mistake before, so I made a couple of mistakes, so I'll have to correct for you later on the video. But this is what I decided to do, and I'm probably gonna install this light into. There's like these two sections for a choke, and I think it was for four-wheel drive that this car doesn't have. Of course it has a choke, but it doesn't have the four-wheel drive. So I'm going to plug this light in as a substitute, so that way when you turn it on, the ignition, you're going to see the light, and as soon as you turn the ignition over and the car runs, the light should go off. So I'm still going to use this light for that, but other than that, okay. I installed the dash. Again, might work. Sorry for that, guys. Just to give an example, I put in the sensors. I'll show you what the sensors are. For these guys, I put in the oil sending unit inside of the engine, of course. And then the other thing I put in was a new sending unit for the temperature gauge. I could turn this on for you. Pretty bright. That's the LEDs. One on the left here is for the fasten seat belts. The one on the right is for the brake. This light here, if you can see it here, that's the light I installed. It's kind of hard to see, but it's a battery light. So when you turn, that's what I was talking about earlier. You need to have the bulb in order to excite the generator. So what should happen is that when you turn it over, that bulb should go out. It only should come on if the car's running. It only should come on if something's wrong with the alternator. So let's see if it should go out. Let's see. Yep, goes right out. So that's looking good. So I'll keep you guys up to date for the coolant temperature. If you can see it there, it's this green wire here. You're gonna have to switch that sensor out. Right now, basically, that's just a switch. If you have the ones with the idiot lights, you have to drain your coolant out of your radiator and then take the plug off. Usually that's where it is for most of these engines on a 305. And for the oil pressure sending unit, you have to take this off, and it's right next to the distributor. There should be another pressure switch for the oil, and it kind of looks like this. Looks exactly like this, and it sticks in this way. You can see these terminals are bent from me pulling them out, but yeah, it looks just like this. You want to pull this out and put a sending unit or pressure sending unit. And then for the coolant one, this is the look for the coolant one. This is just another pressure switch. I mean, it looks like a temperature one, but I didn't want to take any chances, so I got a new sensor and replaced it, and the gauges should work fine with those modifications. So I figured I'd just give you a heads up, and that's it. Just a little side note here. When you take off the oil pressure switch, you're gonna see the plug, and you're gonna see two prongs here be plugged into. The plug will have 3 wires, which is strange, I know. The one is a red or orange, and that'll be 12 volt. The middle one is black, which goes to your warning light, and then the green is for the choke. Now what is happening is, when you add power, or before you turn on the car, this red applies power. It's going through here, and these two are tied together. Applies power to here. Of course, it's going to have power in this, so you're going to see your idiot light before you turn on the car. And then it's going to give power to the choke, so it can advance, or choke can close off the carburetor, or operate, if you will, before you start the car. So that's like in a closed position. But once the car starts and this begins to see pressure, it already has power to the choke, so it doesn't matter. So once it starts seeing pressure, it will open like a circuit, and then the light will go out, and then the choke doesn't need any power anymore, and then the car will run. So just a little side note. I know this is kind of confusing. Again, this is power. These two are tied together because there's only 2 prongs here. It goes right to the choke. So before you turn the car, power comes in, hits these two. You're going to see your light on. You're going to see it's going to hit the choke. Choke's going to advance and do its thing. And then as soon as you turn the car over, pressure is in here. Pressure will go up. It will open up the circuit, turn off the light, and you're done. So when you get in there, I know this is really tight area because it's right next to the distributor. Just to give you a heads up, I didn't explain it earlier, but there it is, the circuit to you. I can tell you what I did end up doing is end up cutting the wires straight off. Had these 3 wires exposed. I tied the green wire, which goes to the choke, to the positive, which is 12 volt. Only problem with that is that you'll have constant power on your choke. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm going to be changing out the carburetor anyway, I'm going to get a different carb, that would be a problem. because then you'll have power to your choke constantly. It doesn't need to be that way, even though your choke is operated with power and also temperature, but it doesn't need to have power constantly to it either. So when I cut these wires, again, I say I put these two together just to operate the choke, and then I left the black wire, which is going to the instrument light, or the warning light. That became my wire to my gauge, my new gauge, or whatever gauge you're going to use, because I replaced this guy here with a sending unit. Sending unit looks totally different. Sending unit looks more like a box with one tab coming out of it, and then it gets screwed in here. That's where it gets the pressure in here, and then it sends it out to the gauge. So I tied the black wire into this guy here, so that way it goes out to my gauge. This is not going to work with the gauge. It's just a switch is open and close. So I figured I'd just tell you guys what I did.